97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
I love coaching this football team. I love coaching those players in there.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which dropped this morning. Had a lot of great content as Jalen Hurt makes his first start in the NFL. Carson Wentz will watch from the sideline. Geoff Mosher is in the house. And, of course, Football at 4 is brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. We got a lot to get into on this Football at 4 edition with Geoff, as, of course, Jalen Hurt will make his first start. And there's so much that wraps around this, Geoff, as obviously – we're waiting to see what ends up happening here. But first off, how are you, pal?
I'm doing well. It's been a very interesting week in Eagleville, as many of them have been. But I'm looking forward to Sunday's game.
Yeah, man. I know this week is really interesting. So how did you, now that we're to Friday and Jalen's going to start, and Doug said today, he basically, I thought one of the interesting answers that he gave was right off the bat was that, that the team has responded. They've embraced this change. I mean, he wants to try to make it as if, look, this is what the people wanted. They're embracing this. The team has responded well. And then he went right into Jalen's a natural leader. So it seems that they're really trying to push this narrative that everybody is supporting this move. But I want to get your take on, do you feel that that's the case, that the veterans and the younger players, that this was, I don't want to say universal because there's obviously some people who are going to be on one side and the other, but that the locker room supported this move?
I think that this is a case where we often look at the middle ground and say two things can be true at the same time, even though they're seemingly mutually exclusive. And I think that most of the people in that locker room truly believe that Carson Wentz is not as at fault as the numbers and the win-loss records suggest. I think Jason Kelce was fairly outspoken about that throughout the week. I think Fletcher Cox was also outspoken about that throughout the week, that they really believe in Carson, that they know that not all of the things that have happened this year are his fault, including his own regression. And that they know that, that when Carson came here in 2016, as Jason put out, he really kind of transformed that franchise from being where it was to lifting it up to where it was going to be. And they believe in him. And a lot of the time we talk about, whether or not Carson really appeals to all of his teammates or meshes well with them. And I thought this was an important week for him in that I feel like a lot of leaders of that team spoke up and came to his defense. But I also think that they all do recognize that when you're this bad and things are going south the way it has, that things need to change. That happens in every profession, every sport, all the time. And I think they will rally around Jalen Hurts. From all I've heard, Hurts is a good kid who has endeared himself well to a lot of the players on the team. I don't think that anybody's spiting Jalen Hurts just because Carson Wentz is now on the bench. And if anything, I think, they're going to go out there and do their best to try to win a game and help it make it easier for Jalen Hurts.
Making it easy for Jalen Hurts seems to be the theme this week, because I know Wednesday Doug Pederson mentioned, hey, we got to run the ball more. We got to do short passes and screens. And some people would say, well, why didn't he do that for Carson Wentz? And then he went on today to kind of talk about, very similar. We got to simplify things for this kid and make it work. And, you wonder – I don't know if they talked to you about this on Wednesday, but is Doug Pederson out to kind of show that, hey, this wasn't all on me. My offense can work if you just have somebody running it the right way. Do you think there's a part of Doug that wants to kind of prove himself here?
I think that there is a part of what's going to happen over the next 3 or 4 weeks where we learn more about Doug, whether his play calling and play designs really are problematic or whether Carson has just regressed to a point where even good plays were not going to work. Although I would put that also in the category of two things that can also be true that people don't want to maybe acknowledge. But I do think Doug said something interesting today, Mike, that may reflect what you're saying. as far as where he puts accountability. Someone asked him today, I think it was today, about what is the plan for Carson and now that he's going to be on the bench for a little bit. And he talked about it, being a two-way street. I don't know if you guys heard that, but he was basically insinuating, Carson's on the bench now, but it doesn't mean that, we all just, nothing happens for him. He's got to kind of observe here and see over the next few weeks how things look to do his part to rebuild himself. The actual question was, how do you assure that this is just a blip on the radar for Carson? And his response was, I think it's a two-way street. He's got to take ownership and we've got to take ownership. So to your point, Mike, I mean, I think that shows you that Doug feels that it's not just fixable by Doug saying this or another coach saying that there's a part of Carson that's got to really kind of hunker down here over the next 4 weeks and then throughout this offseason to do what he needs to do to get himself back to, a legitimate quarterback. Because a lot of people say this is, so-and-so's job to fix him. And people ignore that he's got to also be receptive to whatever coaching he's going to get.
I'm sure the notion from Doug is, look, I had less talent last year and the offense still worked because Carson was playing at a higher level, and that's why it was able to work, because he was playing so well. So I don't know, you might disagree. Maybe the talent they had last year was similar or better or worse. It was similar, put it that way. I mean, Josh Perkins, Greg Ward is your best receiver. I mean, I would say they're a little bit better talent-wise, weapons-wise anyway this year.
But that's where we kind of find out more about Doug Pederson as well. Because while you're right, I mean, the big knock on Doug, and it's been big from people around the league, is that his offense has gotten stale, that it's the same offense he's been running the year before, the year before, the year before. And if you keep doing that, it doesn't matter who you're putting out there because people know what's coming. They get the leg up on you. So it'll be interesting to see. And this is what I'm really fascinated to see, because there's no doubt that they're going to change some of the play calling and some of what they can do to cater to Jalen Hurts' strength. Any coach would do that for any quarterback. But eventually you're going to run into 3rd and 6 and 3rd and 7, and you're going to have to reach into your normal playbook on 3rd and 6 and 3rd and 7, especially against a team as good as the Saints are defensively. And I'll be interested to see if it's the same assortment of vertical routes that we've been seeing all year long with an offensive line that has struggled to protect, or if Doug can actually stay away from those kind of scenarios where he doesn't have to put his quarterback in 3rd and 8 and 3rd and long, or if he just does something differently along those lines.
When looking at this matchup and knowing that Sean Payton and that coaching staff is on the other side, how much of an advantage is it that there's very limited tape on Jalen Hurts? I'm looking at the other sideline, and if they were going up against another coaching staff, I don't know if I would look at this as much, but Sean Payton and this staff that they have, how effective can they be without the limited tape? Like, how important is it that they're so successful on Jalen Hurts without that much of knowing how Doug is going to utilize him?
Yeah, I think the element of surprise matters, Hunter. I think that will help. I mean, maybe it doesn't help them that the Saints defenses for the last 3 weeks in practice has been going up against Taysom Hill, who does a lot of probably the movement things that Jalen Hurts is going to do. So it's not like it completely takes the Saints by surprise. But I think I've seen on the schedule this year, the Saints have not really faced a dual threat type of quarterback. I don't think they've played Russell Wilson. I don't think they've played the Bills and Josh Allen. So, and of course, they have no idea, exactly what Doug is thinking or what's going to do. So the funny thing is, do I think Doug and his staff have gone back to Oklahoma and looked at some tape there? Yeah, I bet they have. Do I think Sean Payton and his staff, his defensive staff, have ggone back to Oklahoma and looked at the tape there? Yeah, I think they have. So the big cat and mouse game is, what did both of those staffs see, and how much of that do the Eagles plan to incorporate, and how much of it will the Saints be ready for?
Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast dropped this morning. You can get more on this Eagles and Saints game, and obviously the big story, Jalen Hurts. One of the things in college, there were 2 things that really stood out to me, about 3 things really. One, he was a leader among leaders. He was like a Tebow-esque type of leader, right? I mean, that was his reputation coming in, that very, very good leader. 2, very good in the red zone, Jeff. I think he led all players, including running backs, in rushing touchdowns in the red zone last year, which means inside that 20, he adds an extra element that this team has really struggled when they actually got to the red zone, which doesn't happen all that often either. And 3, he averaged about 12 yards per attempt down the field. So here's a guy who was going to take some shots. One area he struggled, though, was accuracy and ball placement. So I'm wondering, is that something we're going to see again from this guy, similar to what Carson Wentz's problems was if you don't have the accuracy and the ball placement, he only completed 40% of his passes. People don't realize that last week. Yeah, they had a spark, but he still struggled to complete the football. So I think that's going to be definitely something to kind of watch. What have people told you about, some of his skill sets and some of the things he needs to work on to be successful?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And, we just had Greg Cosell on with us, with Adam and I on Inside the Birds TV this week. And he went through his entire scouting report of Jalen Hurts in college. And the one thing that Greg said, it's very difficult to know what you're going to get, because with a lot of these guys, not just Jalen Hurts, but a lot of guys coming from spread systems and doing what he does, because just because he did it in college and was asked to do that does not mean he can't do it a different way, right? It just means that the tape shows you that this is what he was asked to do in a highly schemed offense. And that's when you play at Oklahoma, you are in a highly schemed offense. A lot of the reads, a lot of the throws, they're predetermined based on the coverage before the ball is even snapped. And what you saw from Jalen Hurts was a guy who was, and you'll hear this common expression, like a one read and go type of guy. Now, it doesn't mean he can't make progressions and have good accuracy. It just meant that the confines of their offense was, if that read wasn't open, you have the athletic ability, you'll probably have great protection. So if that read's not open, go. Because as you just mentioned, Mike, he's going to pick up a lot of yards on the ground. He ran 230. Was it? No. How many times did he run last year? It was a lot. He ran 233 times last year for Oklahoma, Mike. And compare that to Kyler. Everybody thinks that, well, that's Oklahoma's offense. That's what you do. No, Kyler Murray, who is also a dual threat quarterback, only ran 140 times. So you're talking about a big difference. These guys are not robots. They're not like all the same, right? I mean, Baker Mayfield probably didn't run 230 times either. So that shows you that Jalen Hurts in college, what he was asked to do or what he did was, throw to the ball to that guy who's open or just take off. And you saw some elements of that against the Packers in the second half, which is not surprising. It's not like he had the whole week to work with the first team offense or anything like that. So I anticipate that you'll probably see elements of that against the Saints. And if the Saints are ready for it, then it's going to be difficult for Jalen Hurts. And if he's not as accurate, then it's going to be difficult for Jalen Hurts. But these are all the reasons, Mike, why when they drafted him in the second round, it was a surprise to a lot of people in the NFL community who had him in that third round, fourth round range.
In terms of packages, when Jalen Hurts is out there, 12 personnel, 11 personnel, getting Goddard and Zach Ertz out there on the field, do you think that changes based off of it being Hurts under center, or they're going to try and still implement something similar?
That's a great question. You would like to see 12 personnel, to give you a little bit of, protection there against a good Saints defensive front, but also because Ertz and Goddard are good playmakers, and this is now week 2 for Ertz. He should be a little bit healthier, ready to go, and kind of, definitely want to erase his first half of the season. So I would like to see that, but I'm sure at times you will see some 11 personnel to stretch the field and, having Rager and Hightower and Ward all out there, and maybe Alshon Jeffrey. I guess we're going to have to find out about that.
Yeah, Alshon, I think he was a full participant at practice today, so we'll see how that ends up going. All right, there's a lot that comes from this, Jeff. What if he plays really poorly?
What if he plays really poorly?
Like looks overmatched. 40%, 2 interceptions, just looks frantic. Now, I don't think he'll look frantic. That's one thing. Even on Sunday, he looks very poised. Everything looks slow. I mean, he stepped up on that Ward throw. It was very, the pocket kind of, he kind of, I like the way he got out of it, stepped into his throw, made the throw to Ward. So I don't think he'll look frantic. But what if he just looks overmatched? This is the best defense in football.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be a lot of different storylines that come out of that. It will be that Jalen Hurts was not very good, and then I'm sure the draft will be relitigated. I'm sure some people will defend and say that you threw him, and I'm not saying they're wrong about this, but you gave him a baptism by fire, against the number 1 defense in the league a week after he had to play the Packers at Lambeau in less than a half of football, and this has just not been a great situation. I think it's fair to point out that practices are not normal. Like your Mondays and Tuesdays, you're not allowed at the NovaCare. So even if he wanted to grab a few guys and work in extra on days that are normally days off, he's not getting that opportunity. So I think there are a lot of reasons to expect him not to play well. But if you know how it is, if he does not play well, those reasons will not matter. It will be more, anti-Doug, anti-draft, maybe anti-Jalen, and concern about the future of the franchise.
Right. And then, of course, what if he plays well over the next couple of weeks? Because it's not just as simple as he's our guy, he's played well. You got a huge contract situation that still looms whether he plays well or not.
It certainly will complicate things if he plays really well, and it'll throw a curveball into the situation. We're far away from that, but that's going to make the offseason a lot more interesting, and maybe you hear things more about a competition next year for that starting spot.
And, how do you go into a situation with a $150 million backup quarterback? I mean, that's another problem that's sitting there. I mean, they did this to themselves, obviously. And the one question that I would have is, Doug said on Wednesday, I don't have a crystal ball. I didn't know this could happen. But if you didn't see a scenario where Wentz could potentially not play well and that you turn to this guy and now you have a possible quarterback competition on your hands, I don't know that I can trust that you're the right people to get me out of this mess if you couldn't see this mess possibly happening.
I mean, it's a great point. Plus, also, if things, if he plays well, does that save enough jobs so that it is the new regime? The same regime coming back? I have no idea. I think you're right about all the questions that are going to be provoked and raised here over the next 4 weeks and all the questions that will have to be answered when the dust finally settles on this season.
There's been a lot of talk about the offensive line this year, and it makes a lot of sense. But Jordan Mailata, what have you seen and heard about Jordan Mailata over the last handful of games? Because, it's you're thinking about a first-round draft pick you spent with Andre Dillard, and here's a guy who's stepping in and seems to be playing really well.
He has been playing well. He's improving. Thought he had mostly good moments against the Packers, maybe a few that we'd like to have back. There was one play in particular where he did an amazing job of blocking his man and then recognizing a defensive back blitzing from the other end and then kind of getting in there late to help block that D-back who was coming, which was just great recognition on his part. And so, I have no reason to think that Jordan Mailata is not going to continue to progress and become a good player, but I'm also, you play the best guy and you go after the best guys you can and figure it out there. So Andre Dillard will come back. If the Eagles have a top 5 pick, there's that kid from Oregon who's supposed to be who opted out this year. He's considered the best offensive lineman in the draft. He's considered a top 5 overall talent. If he's there and you want to go that's the best on your board, I'm not going to say don't take him. Take the best players available. You got enough holes and you've had injury issues. So, I'd like to see Jordan Mailata become a staple on this line. But you leave nothing to chance.
All right, Geoff Mosher, obviously this is a game here, which I don't know where, winning, losing, all that at this point. You're 3-8-1. You're a couple of games back. I mean, the scenarios for you to get in are kind of far-fetched. I mean, you got to go like 3-1 almost at this point just to get in into the spot here. But, one of the things, I guess, is evaluation mode, right? I mean, they got to still figure out, is Travis Fulgham a part of their future here? What about Nate Herbig? I guess you just mentioned Mailata. I guess Driscoll. There's a lot of things because we know the cap is such a problem for them next year that they might have to get rid of some veteran guys, not because they want to, but because they have to. So you got to start evaluating these players.
Absolutely do, Mike. You're very correct on that. Kevon Wallace is a guy I think you just mentioned that'll get in there, and the other safety that they like, Epps. Cornerback. I think it's with Avonte Maddox. I think they have to realize that he is not an outside corner and moving back to the slot. And now you're again looking at the outside corner. Of course, it would be helpful if Darius Slay finished off the season pretty well and at least held his own against Michael Thomas. So you feel better about him after 2 pretty rough weeks against Devontae Adams and DK Metcalf. So, and I don't know what the deal with Arcega-Whiteside is. He's probably a lost cause by now, but if there is any opportunity for him to make some plays here, obviously he'll have to do that to keep his job. But yeah, there's basically at every single position, there are people who are going to be evaluated. And, is Boston Scott really the number 2 running back going forward? Has he done enough for that? So every position's got to have a major evaluation in these last 4 games.
You mentioned Darius Slay and Michael Thomas, and I can't wait to see how that plays out. But what about Alvin Kamara? If you're Jim Schwartz, what's your best idea and your best concept that you can come up with to try and stop this guy?
Well, the one thing that we've seen with Taysom Hill as the quarterback of the Saints is that Kamara is not catching as many passes. The Eagles tend to be pretty good against the run, although they've certainly had some letdowns this year. And, of course, last week in that 77-yard touchdown by Aaron Jones. But they tend to be decent against the run. You always wonder with the linebackers matching up in the passing game and some of the safeties on, having a guy like Kamara and having to defend him at the second level. But that hasn't really been much a part of New Orleans' offense for the last few weeks. Now, me saying that means that Kamara will probably catch about 9 passes for 110 yards this weekend, now that I'm out of the fantasy playoffs and he was on my fantasy team. But I'm not sure that's I think that's their concern. But my God, this team has so many fish to fry. He's just one of many. I think their big concern should be Taysom Hill, because they've had a real difficult time this year against quarterbacks who are mobile, whether it was Lamar Jackson or Daniel Jones.
Now, I want to get your real quick, because you just mentioned Kamara and what the weapon he is. I did a story on Miles Sanders and was pretty surprised to find out last year he had 50 catches, okay? He had 50 catches last year. Right now he's got 19 total catches. In the last 4 weeks of last year, he had 18 catches. What has happened to him in the passing game? Forget the offense. They don't run him enough. But what has happened to him in that part of the game?
You see, I think this, Mike, speaks to a bigger part of not just Miles, but the offense in general. I mean, I just think it was so dysfunctional now for 5 or 6 weeks that you just don't see any fluidity to it or anybody being in a good rhythm. And now that we're 14 or 15, how many? I forget how many weeks we're in, like 13 or 14 here. Travis Fulgham had a nice 4-week stretch with 2 really good games from volume standpoint, but even he's disappeared. So is it Travis? Is it Miles? Is it Jalen Reagor, who only got the ball 3 times last game? Or is that all part of this offense that had no rhythm or flow? I mean, I know people love to kill that the Eagles passed on Justin Jefferson for Reagor and everything, but you mean to tell me Justin Jefferson's catching 8 to 10 balls a week in this offense? I have a hard time seeing it, man. I really do.
Yeah, I know that we always want to say, man, imagine if we had that guy, but we just might make that guy lousy.
Yeah, I'm sure Jalen Reagor's like, wow, imagine if I was in any other offense right now, what I would have been able to show.
Well, and to be fair, I don't think they've done a good job with using him either.
Exactly.
So,
and Miles, like, I know that he's dropped a few passes that, some you can argue whether they're too low or not, but I don't know why they haven't schemed him to line him up. They did it earlier in the year against the Bengals. You saw that he lined him up on the outside. He beat his linebacker, and Carson just completely missed him by 5 miles. But that's no reason not to keep doing it. I mean, he was beating his guy.
Yeah, I feel like they can definitely do a better job getting Miles Sanders, Jalen Reagor more involved into their offense. We'll see if Doug Pederson involves this offense now that he has a different quarterback, or we're going to see a lot of the same. That is the big storyline for Sunday. Jalen Hurts will get the start. You can hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. The Inside the Birds pregame show begins at 1 p.m., right?
Yeah, no, we're going to be 10 a.m. We are 10 a.m. now from here on out.
10 a.m.?
Yeah.
You're going like 6 hours, or you're going 10 to 1?
No. 10 to noon. We want people to enjoy the 1 o'clock football games and not have to compete against them, because our numbers have been great at 10 a.m. So we just figured that people like it better in the morning.
There you go. 10 a.m. on all the Inside the Birds social media platforms. So make sure you guys get in on that. It is an excellent breakdown of the game. Trey Thomas, Greg Cosell, Adam Kaplan, and Geoff Mosher, who, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Moshe, we'll talk to you soon, pal.
All right, fellas. Have a great weekend.
All right. And, of course, the Eagles can be heard right here on 97.3 ESPN as Jalen Hurts makes his first start.